Welcome to today's edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Richard Parrish to Author's Corner. He's written the book, The Gift of Conflict, The Art of Biblical Reconciliation, which is published by Richard Parrish Ministries. He'll tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. Let me tell you a little bit about Richard. He is the director of Richard Parrish Ministries, an outreach of music serving the Word. Richard attends to the soul care of pastors, leaders, and learners. He is an ordained minister and speaks in many cross-denominational settings. A seasoned, empowering, and compassionate leader, he devotes his life to assisting others through writing, speaking, mentoring, and offering spiritual care to pastors and ministry leaders. Richard, thank you so much for being with us on Author's Corner.
Thank you, Roberta. It's nice to be with you and your audience.
Well, first of all, the book has the title, The Gift of Conflict. Tell us why conflict can be a gift.
Conflict is a gift in many different ways. We tend to want to avoid conflict. We every beauty pageant that we see, the contestant is quick to say, I just want world peace. And world peace is nice. A peaceful world would make my life more convenient. But we have to recognize that we live in a world that is filled with conflict.
Yeah.
It always has been. And when we discover that conflict is what drives the desire for peace, we begin to see a glimpse of the gift that is possible because of conflict. You see, discord disturbs our contentment, and we become uncomfortable when our tranquility becomes troubled. And so without the reconciliation of relationships, we live our life in discord, and that only amplifies our discomfort. And so the gift that we discover because of conflict is the invitation to reconciliation.
I have met people that say, I don't like to be argumentative. I want to avoid all of that type of thing. What do you say to people that would rather just walk away from a problem than deal with it?
I think that those of us, and I include myself in that category of people, I would rather shy away from conflict rather than to face it. I think that what we recognize is that by doing so, we're actually creating greater conflict. It may not be so much with the person or the situation that we want to avoid, but because we avoid it, it creates internal conflict with us. So you have external conflict, you have internal conflict. Avoidance is the fuel that feeds our internal conflict.
How can people recognize when they are avoiding conflict? I mean, is something going on within us that will give us the first clue that we need to step out and be bolder in dealing with an issue?
Oh, I think so. I think one of the things that we begin to discover about avoidance is if we're really paying attention to ourselves, we begin to recognize that maybe I'm just irritated. Maybe I'm things are the little things in life that are normally nothing begins to be something big to us. There's signs of discouragement. There's signs of depression. There's signs internally that make us recognize that maybe something's driving this. And as we explore what's going on inside of us, we begin to recognize that maybe confronting the issue is going to diminish the internal conflict.
if a person has conflict with another person, because generally that's the issue, whether, it's not that we have conflict with statues or anything like that, what would you say is the best thing to do first?
Well, there's several things I address in the book about how we can effectively come to the table to discuss areas of conflict. I think one of the things is get the facts before you react. It's amazing how I want to assume what the issue is without the facts. And I can tell you from personal experience that only creates greater conflict. So I don't want to become reactionary. I want to sit down and say, help me understand.
Yeah.
We have a disagreement here, but help me. I'd like to see your perspective. What is it on your side that I need to learn and I need to hear? And then be willing to honestly listen. I've been in conversations with people that were trying to resolve an issue, and as one person is talking, the other person, you can see their mind rolling. They're already formulating their words as to what they're going to say back before they even listen to you. Not only is that offensive, it widens the gap between our relationship. To learn the art of listening, just to listen. That listening doesn't mean you're agreeing. It just means you're giving respect to the person because you valued them. You value their dignity, their worth. And I want to be able to learn. So listening well, get the facts before you react. Recognize that it's not agreement that we're really looking for. It's unity that we're striving for. Unity is not necessarily just everyone being in agreement. But we don't want to sacrifice unity because of our disagreement. Does that make sense, Roberta?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody's going to have the same opinion about everything, but especially in a church structure, we can still be unified toward the ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
And that was something that when I was a much younger Christian and I would see verses that talked about unity, it's like, how can you ever expect people to be unified when we've got such differing opinions even on Scripture? But that part's okay, as long as we have the ultimate goal of loving God, serving Jesus, and reaching others for Christ. I recognize that there are some things that we have to be unified about, and others that we can actually be, what they say, we agree to disagree upon. Well, today I am talking with Richard Parrish regarding his book, The Gift of Conflict, The Art of Biblical Reconciliation, which is published by Richard Parrish Ministries, and you're listening to Author's Corner. I'm Roberta Foster. Now, in your bio, it talked about your working with leaders and pastors. Is this an effort to for pastors primarily, or leaders of the church, to learn how to deal with reconciliation and conflict biblically? Or does it go beyond them?
It absolutely goes beyond them. The nature of conflict, it impacts all of us. My ministry serves pastors, leaders, and learners. All of us are learners. And although the majority of my ministry is with pastors and leaders, the content of this book and the course, the companion course that goes with the book, is intended to help all of us recognize that we don't have to be afraid of conflict. We can approach it. We can discover the gift of reconciliation because we're willing to face it. So the book is much larger and broader than just pastors and church leaders.
So are there some misconceptions about conflict that people have?
I think so. I think conflict with a lot of people, it triggers issues of defensiveness. Without, when we just say conflict, who wants conflict? Roberta, if you would just always agree with me on everything I think and say, we'd have no conflict. But the truth is, that's not going to happen, and you know it and I know it. So we can still have relationship. We can explore it. And so conflict, the misconception of conflict is that we feel that it's a barrier that keeps us from peace. But the truth is, conflict is the bridge that allows us to come together. Conflict is, you can't have peace without going through the road of conflict. If there was no conflict, we'd not need peace. So there's a misconception that if we could just get away from conflict, we'd have peace. But that's not the case.
Now, is there a difference between disagreement and conflict?
Well, it depends how broad you want to make the definition. A conflict can be as simple as a disagreement.
Okay.
But I can have a disagreement and not have conflict.
Yes.
I have wonderful pastor friends of mine that on certain theological, points of view, we disagree, but I don't have any conflict with that because it's recognizing they have a different view, I have a different view, but we're still brothers in Christ. And so that's not conflict to me. Now, if there's a conflict that is really creating tension and strife, then it's more than just a disagreement. It's moving it to a deeper level.
Well, Chapter 7 of your book says conflict resolution strategies. So picking just maybe the first one of what we should do if we have a conflict, you already talked about getting your facts and learning to listen. What else is involved in learning how to resolve our conflicts?
I think one of the key things is to be sure to clearly name the issue.
Okay.
Because we are afraid of offending somebody, we want to talk around the issue rather than addressing the issue.
Okay.
We don't want to offend someone, so let's camouflage it. But the problem is, if you don't name the issue, and you have to avoid the vagueness, you'll never establish common ground until we know what the issue is and that we made sure that it's clearly understood that this is the issue we're talking about.
I can see where that is key to a resolution because you definitely need to know where the problem lies.
Absolutely.
Well, today I am having the pleasure of talking with Richard Parrish about his book, The Gift of Conflict, The Art of Biblical Reconciliation. So, Richard, tell our listeners how they can learn more about your ministry and this book.
The audience can find the book on my website at richardparrish.com, or it's available on Amazon. And there's a companion course that goes with the book. There's more information on my website, which is richardparrish.com. And I would encourage the audience to reach out and check the book out. I think you're going to find that it's going to be a helpful tool in how we can approach conflict without the fear, but also to discover the gift that we will experience because we're willing to face conflict.
Wonderful. So one more time, the book is The Gift of Conflict, The Art of Biblical Reconciliation. I've been talking with Richard Parrish, and certainly thank you, Richard, for giving us a copy of the book and chatting with us today.
Roberta, thank you, and God's best to your audience.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to hear this again, you can find it on your favorite podcast platform or through kneo.org. I'm Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.